Honda's made some interesting decisions when it comes to the introduction of this new 11th generation Civic. First things first, they axed the coupe body style, meaning you can only choose from a sedan or a hatchback. However, Honda is still listening to the enthusiasts by offering great alternatives to its popular Civic Si, because there are undoubtedly people in the comments saying, if only it was a hatchback, then I'd buy it. Well, Honda appears to have listened with the introduction of this, the Civic Hatchback Sport Touring. But is it a great alternative to the practical-minded buyers out there to a Civic Si? Well, today, we're going to find out. First things first, let's do a rundown on this new 11th generation Honda Civic. As you might have guessed, the 11th gen follows the wildly successful 10th generation Civic and takes a lot of the key things that made that car so strong and so competitive and refines it even further. So compared to the 10th generation Civic, this new 11th gen has a 1.5 inch longer wheelbase, which means it rides a bit more nicely on the freeway. This thing is actually very, very comfortable. And in terms of ride and handling, it isn't just more comfortable. They've really improved the dynamics of this vehicle compared to the 10th generation model. The word that comes to mind is fluidity and probably poise right after that. You see, Honda's taken some learnings from the development of the Civic Type R and applied it to this new 11th gen model. They've revised the suspension geometry and changed the suspension bushings. A lot of them are basically much more firm, and that results in a car that handles very, very nicely. I mentioned it is very comfortable on the interstate. It's true, this thing can cruise at extra legal speeds just phenomenally. But up here on a winding road, this is really where Honda has earned their chops over the years, making these cars that drive so nicely. This Civic just upholds that tradition. This is the best handling compact car on sale today, bar none. Mazda 3, eat your heart out. This thing is fantastic up here. Now keep in mind, this is not an SI or a Type R model, so it's a regular Civic Sport, but man, this just shows how good the basic bones of this new Civic really are. It also helps this 11th generation Civic is a huge step forward in terms of overall refinement. Not only does it ride and handle more fluidly than its predecessor, but while the 10th gen Civic was a huge step up from the 9th gen, I feel like this 11th gen model is that much further of a step forward because this interior is fantastic. Now, the car to beat in terms of interior and interior refinement in the compact car segment was the Mazda 3, but I think this guy has either come to parity with or maybe even dethroned the Mazda 3 in terms of the interior. Now, the Sport Touring model is expensive. It's basically fully loaded at $31,000. Yes, I know, 31 grand for a regular Civic. But man, is it a very, very nice cabin. Now, all Civics get Apple CarPlay and Android Auto and a 7-inch touchscreen. This Sport Touring, though, trades that out for a larger 9-inch display, similar to what you'd find in the Accord. Fantastic interface here. Nice blend of physical buttons, knobs, and a touchscreen. Honda, rightfully so, took their beatings when they debuted the 10th gen Civic with no knobs on the touchscreen. They've since learned, and it also helps in this case it's paired to Bose audio, which actually bumps very hard. And on this Sport Touring, we also have the inclusion of wireless CarPlay and wireless Android Auto, along with wireless phone charging down here in this little pad. The fit, finish, and materials in here are fantastic. Honda made a big deal about the fact that the trim here on the dash is actually real metal, though it is coated for durability, so it ends up kind of feeling plasticky anyway. Oh well, real metal nonetheless. And like the Civic sedan that I reviewed on this channel a few months ago, the good thing about this hatchback model is that from the quarter panels forward, it's identical to the sedan in terms of the look, feel, and actually the measurements inside. So you can very comfortably get 4 6-footers in this thing, no problem. The perk of the hatch, however, is of course the added storage. Not only do you have the much larger trunk opening with that hatch, but storage volume is up substantially, up to 25 cubic feet. That's about a 60% boost over the sedan. But this is an enthusiast channel. I know my audience, you guys are like me. You care about the enthusiast stuff, the fun stuff. And Honda does not disappoint here. That's why I was so excited to get this particular vehicle to test for the channel. In this case, because Honda only offers the SI in the sedan body, if you want a hatchback and you want near the performance of the SI, well, this is the car you should be looking at here. So up front, we have a 1.5-liter turbo 4, the L15B. At first glance, you may think that's basically the same engine as in the 10th gen. What's the big deal? Honda has made a ton of changes to this engine. Not only does it produce a few more horsepower, about 15 pound-feet of torque more in the mid-range, thanks to a new turbocharger, but they made a lot of engine changes as well. If you look at the engine bay of the two cars, they are very different. I think it is genuinely one of the smoothest 4-cylinder engines I've ever experienced at any price point. Usually, manual transmissions can showcase increased noise, vibration, harshness, NVH, compared to their automatic counterparts, because there's no torque converter to absorb those vibrations. But this thing is just smooth as silk. When you rev it out, there's no harshness. It doesn't sound like much of anything, to be fair, but look at that. So smooth. There's no coarseness. There's no vibration. In terms of the sound, the feel, it's fantastic. It really does make the Toyota Corolla hatchback feel like a tractor by comparison. Then there's the efficacy. Because this is a modern downsized engine with a little turbocharger bolted onto it, the performance is pretty solid, because despite being a 1.5-liter 4, this thing kicks out 180 horsepower and 177 pound-feet of torque. And the majority of that torque really comes in by 2,500 revs and holds to about 5,500. Sure, the power dies off by 6 grand, but if you keep this thing in the mid-range, from 3 to 5, this engine's really cooking. And it's a joy to keep this engine in the power band because of this 6-speed stick. Now, I reviewed the Civic sedan with the same engine in the CVT automatic. That is a fantastic pairing, in my opinion. It's the volume calibration that Honda's going to sell. The majority of people will go for the 1.5T in the automatic, and good for them. It's a really good pairing. Honda did a great job there. But I'm happy to report that the 6-speed stick is also a fantastic little transmission, because sometimes modern manuals, especially in economy cars like this, can feel like afterthoughts. This is Honda bringing its A game to a regular model Civic. Sure, the clutch is a marshmallow, and there's no real feel coming from that guy, but it is actually very easy to sit in bumper-to-bumper traffic with. But this shifter is delightful. It has a nice definitive action between the gates, and you also hear the shift assembly. Ooh, that's very satisfying. And that makes rolling the gears in this car an absolute pleasure. The only downside, as you might be able to hear, is the Rev Hang. Now, Rev Hang is when you go to clutch in and change gears, and the revs just linger there for a long time before finally dropping, which means smooth shifts and shifting quickly can be a bit cumbersome. It's better than the 10th gen, which was appalling. Even the 10th gen SI had some of the worst Rev Hang I've ever experienced. It's better than that car, but it is still present. Overall, this powertrain, while on paper, might not sound like a huge jump from 10th gen, but when you get behind the wheel and actually drive it, it really is. So is the Civic Hatchback Sport Touring an excellent alternative to the Civic Si for people who want the hatchback body style? Well, yeah, for everyday driving, this thing is fantastic. It's comfortable, quiet, refined, spacious. Oh, and did I mention it's fuel efficient? This thing will crack 38 mpg on the freeway. That's fantastic. And so, for the intersectionality of people who want a fun-to-drive everyday car, but want a bit more luxe than what they find in the Civic Si, well, this is a great alternative. But Jake, what about the competition? Well, that's actually an interesting point. Thank you for bringing it up. In this intersectionality of people who want a luxury line compact hatchback with a manual transmission, there are more choices than you'd think at first glance. You can still get a Subaru Impreza hatchback with a stick, though I would encourage you not to. Ugh. Sure, you can hop into a Toyota Corolla hatchback. I think they look fantastic, but Less expensive, less contented, not nearly as nice to drive. Okie dokie, that's out of the way. Then we have the stalwart Mazda 3 hatchback. Now, I'm a Mazda apologist. I think the Mazda 3 in its current form isn't as good as it could be, and previous ones were better, and that's pretty much where I'll leave that. Skip it. I think this has a better drive from behind the wheel. It's definitely a better driver's vehicle than the Mazda 3. Independent suspension, all 4 corners versus the Mazda's cheaper torsion beamer axle kind of dictates that. Then there's some practical things. I think the Mazda 3 has terrible outward visibility. The blind spots in the back are pretty miserable. This has great outward visibility. One of the things Honda really stressed was bringing the belt line as low as possible to evoke the feeling of old school Hondas, because that was a huge hallmark trait of like older Civics and Accords. It felt like you could look right down at the edge of the hood. So overall, the Civic is still the king of the compact car segment. And if you want a hatchback with a stick, well, Honda will offer it to you, which is awesome. Because if you want this, it's here, and it's great. So let's sum things up. The new Civic Hatchback. You can get it with the spicy 1.5T engine and a stick if you want. Thumbs up. Independent suspension, all 4 corners, revised with learnings from the Type R, so it handles and drives beautifully. Thumbs up. The interior, fantastic. Huge improvement. Thumbs up. It is the most expensive of the competition as a result when you fully load it up like this one. Well, what can you expect? If you want the best, you have to pay for it. But I think the $1,000 or so price premium compared to a comparably equipped Mazda 3 hatchback is just money well spent, because, man, this is such a better experience for all the changes Honda's made. And so there it is. The 2022 Civic Hatchback is a fantastic option if you're in the market to buy a compact hatchback and you enjoy the driving experience. And I think that's all I got for you guys today. My name is Jake. You've been watching Drive, Brake, Fix, Repeat, and I'll see you guys next time where I go do more fun things with cars. Bye.